Hi, it's me, F. Gardner. I was getting a lot of requests in the comments to talk about reptilians. Yeah, so that's a popular conspiracy theory, urban legend type of thing. And yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. The very short story is that they're real. And so I'll start off by saying sort of what I said about other topics like flat Earth and a lot of other whatever things you can look in all cultures and they talk about it. So here I'm Buddhist, and they have the idea of like nagas, which are like reptilian kind of entities, these beings that they're serpent-like. They're called nagas, Nagas, and I've heard it disputed if reptilians exist, if they're nagas or if they're a type of deva, which are like there's devas and jealous devas. So I guess you could sort of think of it kind of like angels and fallen angels. Not exactly, because it's not totally the same in the sense of like how good and evil would be in Buddhism. Like there's the idea of like a lot of it being ignorance, or ignorance of like the aggregates, like so like the senses and the manner in which you think and the desire, things like that. And but with reptilians, these the whole trope of reptilians, serpent-like lizard beings, lizard men, whatever. That's in kind of all different religions. It's in like it's Abrahamic faiths. So like you have the serpent in the garden. Satan is often depicted as like a snake, sometimes called the dragon, and so it's a lot of different religions talk about that. And then you have like dinosaurs. That's highly disputed if dinosaurs existed or not. And but then you have like dragons. So you get the old like medieval depictions of dragons, and then like ancient Chinese depictions of dragons. And so it's like all across the board you have these creatures, these entities, beings, whatever you want to call them. And so yeah, it makes me think like it makes sense that there was something like that, and that they were dangerous. And yeah, they're probably, well, not just probably, I think for sure they're still around, because they talk about them like transforming, and they can like pretend to be people. And yeah, so that's part of why. And I've heard it argued, well, what about dinosaurs? Could those have just been reptilians and they're trying to hide the truth? I don't know. Like I mentioned Eric Dubay, like how I really like his flat Earth videos. Like how, yeah, I think Eric Dubay, yeah, he's the man. He knows his stuff about flat Earth, and he's done a number of videos about dinosaurs. He doesn't believe they really exist, and I kind of agree with him. I'm kind of on the fence about. So he says when you go to a museum, everything you see is fake, and yeah, I agree with him about that. That it's like what you see, they're recreations, like replicas. And when I first discovered that, I think it wasn't until I was in like my mid 20s or late 20s that I found that out, and I thought, what? Well, that sucks. They're like replicas. They're like models. They're not real. So yeah, you go to the museum, and all the dinosaurs you see, they're not the real skeletons of fossils. They say, oh no, the real ones are, they're too fragile. We keep them all locked up and you can't see it. These are just what they look like. Excuse me. So yeah, that's like, oh wait, that's kind of lame. They're not real. Why would you travel to the museum just to see if they're not real? the fact that something is real, that's what makes it cool, and in that sense, you go to a museum and see it. So, but there's still like it can still be cool if it's fiction, like Jurassic Park. That's great. It's one of my favorite movies, like the original Jurassic Park. Um, I think there's some new movies of those now. I haven't seen the new ones, but yeah, the original Jurassic Park. That's a great movie. It's still fun, even though if it could be fiction. But I'm inclined to think that I'm not saying they're totally not real, but like when you go to maybe they're misleading us about what they really were, and they have these fake fossils. You go to the museum and you see the fake fossils, the fake skeletons, whatever, of the dinosaurs, and yeah, all that's fake. But maybe like so in Buddhism, there's the Nagas, and or like in Abrahamic faith, they would say like demons, like serpent like or like reptilian looking demons. Like this isn't like all religions. Yeah, pretty much all religions talk about this. So maybe they're trying to hide what they really were because they're like still around. Yeah, I don't know. And or were they all bad? Were some good? I don't know if it's. Yeah, it's tough to say for sure. I'm inclined to think that yeah, the museums, yeah, it's fake, and what you see there's fake. They're not showing you the real thing, but why did all these cultures talk about this stuff? Like the Middle Ages, I think a lot of the Middle Ages is faked. This is a little bit different, but yes, that's sort of a different topic. I'll just real quick, I'll say like, so the Middle Ages, Dark Ages, yeah, so it's like what, 1,000 whatever years, like if you look into that, they were trying to like lengthen the time for trying to remember. I wanted to say Charlemagne, but I think it was someone else. Anyway, but they were trying in like monasteries and stuff. They were trying to lengthen. It's a long story for why they were trying to do that, but they were, and you could kind of prove that they were trying to make the date like at a later date and time than it really was. That's kind of more a separate matter, but they were trying to do that, and it's hard to say. Like, so there's evidence that they were definitely doing that, but like, did they succeed? That's kind of up in the air. I think probably. It's hard to say how much of it. Does that mean all 1,000 whatever years of the Dark Ages are fake? Not necessarily. For a while, I was convinced, oh yeah, that's all 1,000 years probably fake. But then looking more into that, I don't know. It could be 200 years faked. So like, and that they just like extended, they artificially lengthened the time for what the Dark Ages was, because like, and that's when all the dragons would have appeared and stuff. So like, it doesn't make sense when you think about like the Renaissance, like all of a sudden that happened and then everything is, there's all this progress, but then nothing happened for 1,000 years. It doesn't make any sense. Before that, they say there's nothing for 1,000 whatever years, the Dark Ages, and then the Renaissance happened, and all this progress immediately. So it's really fishy. That a lot of it's fake. I'm not saying it was all fake. And then if a lot of the stuff about the dragons is from then, who knows if that's accurate? But at different parts on Earth, they were talking about the same sort of thing. Like I said, the ancient Chinese talked about dragons, and their depictions are similar. And why are dragons, like, why are they so similar to dinosaurs? Like these giant lizard beings. And like on Buddhism, it is the idea of the Nagas, the reptilian-esque creatures, and then the Bible, the demons. Not only that, but you have in them like the book of Job, they talk about dinosaurs. Like a lot of people don't know that how dinosaurs are in the Bible. They call them, or they say behemoth. And I've heard people argue like, oh no, that's like an elephant they're talking about. But if you read it, it sounds like they're talking about a dinosaur, like a T-Rex. But then some of the dinosaurs, I think, I forget which ones specifically, but they're like admitted like fakes, like entire species, and they're still taught in like textbooks that they're real, even though like it came out later that they're fake, but they still teach them. And like the Tyrannosaurus Rex, like that's the most famous dinosaur ever. They've never even uncovered a Tyrannosaurus Rex skull. So like they'll build these dinosaurs out of just a few pieces, like a few bones, and then put together like this is a hypothetical model of what it could look like, and then it's accepted as fact. So it's very strange. So yeah, dinosaurs as they're like commonly presented, probably not true in that sense, especially now they talk about them having like feathers, but that's because they're trying to like connect the evolution stuff. And a lot of people think, people that don't believe in evolution, that's just like a fundamentalist Christian thing. But no, I'm Buddhist. I don't believe in evolution, as I've explained before. It doesn't make sense. And yeah, so how they say, how modern science, whatever, paleontologists, like they'll say that they had feathers. I think they're just trying to connect them to birds in the same way they try to make it seem like humans are connected to apes. And I've already had the video too about how I don't believe gorillas are real. And monkeys, yeah, so. And then, yeah, so it's all across the board, all these different religions. It's very, not suspicious, but, well, it makes you think, well, there's something to this. Even, yeah, so what Eric Dubé is saying, yeah, basically he's right, but there's probably these giant lizards still, and I think maybe they're trying to mislead us. I can't really prove that part. It's just, looking at it, it's like it's just overwhelming evidence that there's something, that there were these giant lizard things with early man, and I don't mean caveman. I don't think there were ever cavemen or whatever. We've always been like this. There's no such thing as evolution. Yeah, so yeah, I'm a devout Buddhist. I don't believe in evolution. It surprises some people because they think it's just like a fundamentalist Christian thing. But no, there are Buddhists such as myself, such as F. Gardner. I don't believe in evolution, and I'm a Buddhist. So, yeah, that, and yeah, so if dinosaurs were real, like, and it's hard to say if they're all bad or they're good ones. I guess it could have been like the Flintstones. That sounds, I guess, kind of funny to most people to say that, but I mean, think about it. It's like, yeah, this Flintstones, it's like a documentary then, like, not just a cartoon and movie, like, yeah, it'd just be like they were living with them, with humans, these giant lizard creatures, and that the Flintstones is basically, yeah, like real life, basically. But yeah, they're probably dangerous ones and probably highly intelligent. I don't think they were just like mindless, like they try to make it seem like dinosaurs were. Or not mindless, but like primitive. I don't think that. Yeah, because like they can be tricky, like when these different religions talk about these sort of things, if they existed, it makes me suspect that they were maybe even more intelligent, whatever you want, if you want to say reptilians, dinosaurs, dragons, nagas, or even just whatever, lizard men, whatever, however you want to put it. And yeah, I've heard people say like, are they interdimensionally? And that makes sense too, I guess. Like in the same way people talk about aliens, like I don't believe in outer space since I'm a flat earther. Since I'm a Buddhist flat earther, I don't think there's such a thing as outer space, but like aliens isn't like alien from human, like different, like maybe interdimensionally, sure, as I've mentioned before. And you could say, are those demons or devils or whatever, or the machine elves, like I've talked about that. Well, maybe they're different I don't know, like different things coming from interdimensionally. And yeah, I've heard about various like stories where people will meditate and have visions of them. And first off, there's nothing wrong with meditation. I guess I should specify. I meditate all the time. I've been meditating since I was a kid. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people think like, oh, is meditation dangerous? No, it's not dangerous. And yeah, but then people, if they see a vision, or it doesn't even have to just be meditation. It could be if they do DMT, they smoke DMT, or they have a really vivid nightmare, a really vivid dream, a nightmare, and they are out of body kind of experience, near death experience, like depictions that when the Buddha, when he saw the wheel of life, the classic Buddhist depiction of it looks like a demon in the back. It's holding the wheel of life. It shows like where you're gonna go and everything. He's holding it in his mouth, like it's like right here in his mouth, and that's because the Buddha saw this and he realized that everything was contained within that, and that this demonic being behind it, it's so that's either Mara, so the devil in Buddhism, and yeah, so it's sometimes people will say, oh, is that something else? But basically that's what it boils down to, that it's, yeah, Mara containing the wheel of life, like everything like within himself, that he's controlling it all, like he's called the architect, and like the evil one. So he's depicted often as like reptilian-like, so that too. And that depiction was so important that Buddhist, that's why it's in like so many Buddhist temples, centers, monasteries, is because that's what the Buddha saw. So yeah, not a lot of people realize the significance exactly. But yeah, so Mara is depicted as like reptilian-like a lot of the time, and sometimes it's disputed. Is that literal, or is that just like a figurative, like a symbolic representation of what he saw? I think literal. I don't see why not. Maybe it's hard to put into like total human artistic type terms, like and just artwork, like maybe it's something that like it's beyond our comprehension in this mere flesh and blood mortal kind of world, this illusory world where it's not really real. Yeah, so maybe the only way to know for sure is to experience it yourself to get to that state, like the historical Buddha and everything, like how right before he achieved enlightenment and gained nirvana. But yeah, I've heard of people talking about they'll meditate, and so there's this term in Buddhism, for example, it's called Makyo. So that Ma refers to Mara, and Kyo refers to realm. So Makyo, it's Mara's realm. And if people are in deep meditation, they can enter this realm, this state, and have distractions. It could be like, it could seem demonic, like you could see like it looks like a reptilian, or it could just be you hear something behind you or whatever, or a smell, or so something that takes you out of your meditative state to distract you so that you don't achieve nirvana, so that you don't become enlightened. And yeah, when I hear people say, are they dangerous? Well, I think it's only if you let them have power over you, because I've heard of people talking about like, oh, what if, or people getting possessed, or they'll hear things and they'll start hearing things in their head, and they're wondering if they've gone crazy, or if this is demonic or whatever. Well, part of that is, yeah, it could. Meditation's not dangerous, but it's like allowing something like that to have power over you is not a good idea, obviously. So it's, you tell yourself that, okay, so it's like it's both real and not real. In Buddhism, nothing's real. Nothing here. Like this video we're watching isn't real. I'm not real. You're not real. No one you see is real. The world you live in is not real. It's fake. But it's like there's nirvana. That's what you want to get to. This is, you need to get out of this. The matrix is fake. It's like that. So you're listening to this thing trying to trick you. You need to remind yourself that it doesn't have any power over you because it's not real. You're not real either. So it's like, why would you listen to this thing and let it scare you and let it get to you? So it's that type of thing. There's nothing wrong with meditation. And if something like that actually happens to somebody, they're like allowing themselves to let that have power over them and control them. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily their fault. They're not realizing that that's the thing. So that you need to keep in mind not to let something like that have power over you, because it does not have power over you. Yeah, so that's something people need to remind themselves of if anything like that were to happen. And yeah, so I've heard people say like, yeah, can they shape shift? Because you always hear about that. And yeah, I've heard too many stories about that to think that that's just not, that it's all just fake, that they're not true in that sense. Like those stories, yeah, it's like, yeah, they're real, the reptilians. And yeah, they can shape shift and look like people. And this is why these type of stories exist. That's where they come from. And I've heard people say like, or they controlling everything. Well, I mean, I guess in the sense that Mara is controlling everything. Like it's like he's controlling this. He's like the ruler of the matrix. He's a deva, but he wants to keep us in here. A deva's like an angel, so he's like one of the, or they're like, I guess you could say they're good angels, bad angels, just as in like Abrahamic faith, you have the fallen angels, the bad ones. But like, it's a bit different in Buddhism because it's more like ignorance. Like, so like Mara isn't just outright trying to be evil, he just wants to keep us in here, and he doesn't understand why anyone would want to leave the matrix. Samsara, that's the term in Buddhism, like I've said before. So yeah, it seems to me that reptilians, yeah, they're real, and they're what Buddhism describes as nagas, and that's likely what they are. But I've heard the position that if they could just be a form of a deva, because Mara is already a deva, and Mara is depicted as a reptilian-esque entity a lot of the time. So yeah, that I think sums it up for me. And the thing about the dinosaurs and the connection, it seems like there's a high connection, highly likely connection. And yeah, and dragons, like, are those all the same thing, or are there like separate subspecies for reptilians? Like, are there different types of reptilians? I don't know. That's tough to say. It could be like we're talking about, like how there's different breeds of dogs or whatever, any animal. Possibly. I've got an open mind. I don't know. It's tough to say, but like, yeah, I definitely think reptilians exist, though. Not just a long time ago, but they still exist. And yeah, it's freaky to think about. I mean, obviously, you think about the idea of reptilians, lizard people, whatever. Of course, it's scary to talk about. Like, if you saw one of those things in front of you, you'd probably shit your pants. I mean, I think that's part of why we have all people, not even just people, but like animals too, like are afraid of like snakes and everything. And they say it's like, oh, it's instinct because of evolution. But I think evolution is just a fake lie that science, because science just makes up shit a lot of the time to try to trick us. And so the fact that it scares us, like if you look at depictions of like reptilian or aliens that look a lot like reptilians, so it tells me that that's likely what alien encounters are, and that it's happening interdimensionally, or they're encountering these shape-shifting things, but they're not really coming from outer space because there's no such thing as outer space. But it's actually reptilians and stuff like that. Hard to say if there's different types of reptilians, I don't know. But yeah, that's why I think we have, like if you go on your computer and look up Google images of reptilians, it'll send like a chill down your spine, like, whoa, this is creepy. It's like we all have this reaction to feel like that when we see those sort of depictions, illustrations, whatever, of reptilians, and they look like aliens a lot of the time. And a lot of alien pictures and like old pictures of demons and from different religions, so like fallen angels in Christianity, or like Nagas in Buddhism, or Mara, the devil in Buddhism, they'll look, yeah, reptilian-like, and it makes me think, are these all just coming from the same thing? And the oldest source of that is Buddhism. That's one of the many reasons why I think, just me personally, what persuaded me to Buddhism is just it seemed like it made the most sense, and I had the most evidence. But yeah, so, but I respect what other people believe, obviously. Not trying to sound preachy in any of these videos. Yeah, so reptilians, yeah, definitely real. It's legit. I wish they weren't real because it's like scary, I guess. I mean, the idea of real life being like the Flintstones sounds cool. But like if a lot of them are dangerous, well then it's fucking terrifying. And well, I guess there are a lot of terrifying things in this world. Yeah, so it's just reality. I don't believe what I want to be true. I just follow where the evidence leads me, and so reptilians, yeah, based on following all the evidence or whatever you want to call it that I've reviewed, yeah, it definitely seems like I don't see how they could possibly not be real. It seems like painstakingly clear that they're real, whether I want them to be or not. And yeah, it's scary. And yeah, they're out there. That maybe you know some. I think that's highly likely. If not, like, yeah, you probably absolutely know some. It's just you don't know it because they can shapeshift and everything. And maybe that might be part of where the idea of like the vampire came from, like how they can shapeshift, they can transform. That could be too. Not just vampires, but like werewolves, other things like that. The whole idea of shapeshifting, that could be part of it. Yeah, that doesn't sound implausible to me. None of it does. None of it nothing about reptilians sounds implausible. So yeah, and like the stuff, and here I mentioned Eric Dubé, how he talked about how he doesn't believe dinosaurs exist, and I'm kind of on the fence about his position. I agree with him what he says about, yeah, stuff in museums are fake, but what about reptilians though? Like, because to me that kind of answers it. Like reptilians, dragons, dinosaurs, it's like there's all a connection. And yeah, and then David Icke, yeah, he talks about the reptilian stuff a lot. He's like one of the biggest like reptilian conspiracy theorist or whatever. And I never really like using that term, conspiracy theorist, because people have a negative reaction to that, like as if it's a bad thing. But there's some conspiracies, a lot of them, that are true. But yeah, anyway, David Icke is known for that, talking about reptilians. Yeah, the stuff he talks about is fascinating. And I wrote one of my books. One of my horror novels is titled Reptilian Odyssey, and I get into this idea a lot in that because I try to incorporate urban legends and conspiracies into all my books, and as I've stated before, I believe in a lot of these. And yeah, that one I thought, oh, how can I write a good horror novel about reptilians? Because I couldn't really think of it being done before. I tried to think, what's a type of horror story that's never been done before? I think that a lot of the time, as I've stated, I'll base them on nightmares I've had, and yeah, conspiracies and urban legends that intrigue me, that I think are real. But I'll try to make them like innovative. So like a lot of my books are really like meta, and I've heard people say like, oh, F. Gardner, we like how you do like the really meta a lot of the time, like meta fictional kind of stuff that this isn't done in like horror very often. And yeah, they're right. And I guess it's part of what makes my books unique. And that and like I'll talk about like DMT and like machine elves and like a horror setting for the horror novels, that too. So I try to think outside the box and think, oh, what's not done too often in horror, whether it's metafictional type stuff or like stuff about DMT, and then reptilians that occur to me too. Like, oh, this could be interesting to explore because I already know a good amount about it, and I have a lot of thoughts on the subject. How can I turn this into a narrative, to a horror story? So yeah, check that book out if you're interested in my work and interested in the topic of reptilians. Because even though my books they're works of fiction, they're narratives. Like just as, so for example, like someone might read Dracula or Frankenstein, whatever, classic horror novels. So someone might read one of my books, like what I just mentioned, Reptilian Odyssey. So it's a fictional novel, a story, a tale that I'm telling, but I try to base it on things that are true. I have bits of truth here and there about urban legends and conspiracy theories that I think are, there's truth to a lot of these, and I kind of mix it into an interesting story then. So that was the inspiration, part of the inspiration for that book, Reptilian Odyssey. Yeah, well, I hope you guys liked my video about this. Reptilians. It's something I think about a lot. That it's a very creepy topic, and most people, like with most conspiracies, that they don't take it seriously. They don't think it's real. But yeah, it's definitely one of the most believable ones out there if you look into it. Anyway, I'll catch you guys later.